Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Pulse of New Hampshire's Morning Information Center. I'm Mike Pomp. Good to have you here. The Ogunquit Playhouse is back with live theater this summer, and now through August 28th, it's Jimmy Buffett's Escape to Margaritaville at the new Leary Pavilion, adjacent to the Playhouse, right on Route 1 in Ogunquit, Maine. You can check out tickets. It's through August 28th. Log on to ogunquitplayhouse.org. It's based on a book by a couple of guys, Greg Garcia and New Hampshire's own Mike O'Malley. Mike O'Malley, of course, you've seen him on television and films. He is from New Hampshire, born in Boston, now resides in Los Angeles with his wife and their 3 children. And Mike has been nice enough to join me this morning to talk about Escape to Margaritaville, live from Los Angeles. Hey, Mike, good morning. Welcome. Thanks for joining us early on the program today.
Mike, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks, man. Thanks for spreading the word about Escape to Margaritaville up at the Ogunquit Playhouse.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. It's so great. I mean, I know you as a performer, you're so glad to see things back to some sort of sense of normalcy. I know you've been filming some things lately, and did you make it through the pandemic okay? Were you working, or were you doing some Zoom shows, or what was going on?
Well, I was working. You know, I really just wish that I was still doing Yes Dear and Glee. I wish that I was just acting in those shows, and other people do all the heavy lifting of the producing and the writing, and I just got to show up and get a pat on the back. But yes, during the pandemic, I was working on a show called Heels, which is actually going to premiere August 15th on the Stars Network. It's about independent wrestling and these guys in a small town who are trying to make it as professional wrestlers. So I did that. And then I'm also acting in a show called Snowpiercer, which is going into its 3rd season on TNT. That stars Jennifer Connelly and Sean Bean of Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings fame, and Daveed Diggs from Hamilton.
So you're keeping busy. That's great. You know, Escape to Margaritaville was on the road for a long time before it hit Broadway, and now you're bringing it to the Ogunquit Playhouse, which is really wonderful. You're very familiar with the Ogunquit Playhouse growing up in New Hampshire, and going to UNH and being a part of...
Going through UNH and being up there performing at Prescott Park at the University of New Hampshire, and of course going up to the Ogunquit Playhouse when I was living in Portsmouth.
Yeah,
Escape
absolutely.
to Margaritaville. Yeah, Escape to Margaritaville. So I met Jimmy Buffett about 15 years ago. We created a television show together, a sitcom that was inspired by his short stories, Tales from Margaritaville. And it didn't go anywhere, as often television projects do. Not go anywhere. It was a multi-cam sitcom, just sort of a traditional sitcom. And so when he was talking about possibly adapting his songs into a Broadway musical, he and his friend and manager Frank Marshall reached out, and Frank Marshall was a big movie director too. He just directed the documentary about the Bee Gees, and he produced Raiders of the Lost Ark and a lot of Steven Spielberg's movies. And these guys call you up and they say, "Hey, we want to do a musical based on Jimmy Buffett's songs. Would you like to write the book, which is the story in between the songs, knitting together these disparate songs and trying to come up with a comprehensible story?" And so I called my friend Greg Garcia, who co-created Yes Dear, the sitcom that I was on CBS for quite a long time, and we got together and we came up with what we believe is a fun story about Jimmy Buffett songs. Here's what's great about Escape to Margaritaville, Mike. This is a musical where no one dies, and there's too many musicals where people die. Right? We're done with dying in musicals. This one, we wanted a happy musical where people just sing and dance, and there's some nonsensical songs, and there's some tap dancing, and there's some singing about cheeseburgers in paradise and sharks in the bars, and it's fun. It's just a fun night.
Well, if anybody has been to a Jimmy Buffett concert, and many people have been, you know what it's like. It's not just a concert, it's an event. Looking at some of the trailers and the promotional pieces to Escape to Margaritaville, because I haven't seen the show yet, I plan on seeing it in the next couple of weeks, it's just a fun party. It's just, you're there to have fun, and that's all it's about. I don't think there's no deep meaning to Escape to Margaritaville, except fun, fun and music.
Yes, but I think one of the things that's great about the fact that the Ogunquit Playhouse is doing the musical this year is that we now understand, having been through this pandemic, is that there may not be deep meaning in the musical, and that's intentional, by the way. We just want it to be lighthearted.
Absolutely.
deeper meaning in getting together and being together, laughing and having fun and going out for a night and just enjoying great performers, singing and dancing and trying to entertain us. And also celebrating the music of Jimmy Buffett, who is a guy who has been writing and recording and performing songs that connect with an audience since the late 60s. And so it's a tribute to a guy who has written everything from, songs about cheeseburgers to deep, meaningful songs about, his father, his grandfather, his mother, and those lessons that he's learned. He comes off as a guy who's, he presents himself as a guy who is just a casual guy having a drink at 5 o'clock somewhere. But the truth of the matter is, to be as accomplished as he is, you have to be a very, very hardworking guy who really is thinking about how he wants to connect with an audience.
I totally agree, and he brings life to the stage. And the one thing that you mentioned, Mike, that I totally agree with you is that we have missed this sense of community. And so getting together to see a show, Escape to Margaritaville, and just singing to the songs that we know for decades and just laughing and having a good old time and just relaxing and getting out there and celebrating and partying, we haven't done that in a while. And people are really anxious to do that. And I totally agree. We've missed that whole sense of community and getting together. I want to alert our listeners that Jimmy Buffett's Escape to Margaritaville, co-written by Mike O'Malley, my guest this morning, going on at the Ogunquit Playhouse, which is actually at the Leary Pavilion. It's the outside pavilion now. They really have invested a lot of money, and they decided not to do some stuff inside because they want people to be safe, and that's cool. But they decided to put together a wonderful outdoor pavilion. I saw the show there, Spamalot there, and it was wonderful. I saw it with Charles Hennessy, and it was wonderful, and it was a great thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing this particular show as well, because who's not a Jimmy Buffett fan, right? One thing, Mike, thing I wanted to ask you is, a lot of people know you for your acting, but I think a lot of people may not know that you are an award-winning writer as well. I mean, you've put together this particular show, but you've written some really great things that have been noticed by the entertainment world.
Well, thanks. I've been, after really my time on Yes Dear acting, I have 3 children, and I want to be able to spend a little bit more time at home. And also, when you're an actor, you're limited in the kinds of roles that you can get, whereas, writing, you can work on a bunch of different projects if you can, prove your mettle, so to speak. And so after Yes Dear, I started writing on the staff of the show Shameless, which starred William H. Macy and Emmy Rossum, and I wrote on that for 4 years. Then I went and created a show called Survivor's Remorse, which was executive produced by LeBron James and Tom Werner, famously the owner of the Red Sox.
That's right.
And so I created that show. That went for 4 years on Stars, and that started a relationship on Stars that continues to this day, which is what I was talking about, the show Heels, which I'm the showrunner on that show. Showrunner is kind of the guy in charge of everything. But it was created by a guy named Michael Waldron, who is just a fantastic young writer who is now just setting the world on fire, writing the show Loki on Disney Plus, and working on the new Star Wars movie, and he's just all over the place. And he created this great show that I came in and wrote on and produced, and so it's really happy time to be able to have these varied experiences where you're writing the book for a Broadway musical and you get to see it performed all around the country. Escape to Margaritaville, right before the pandemic shut down everything, it was on a national tour. And it had come through Los Angeles, and was able to take all my family there and friends, and there's nothing like live theater. And so if you're going to work in show business, and this, I'm an example of somebody who can grow up in New Hampshire and end up going out there and coming out here and making a living at it. There's a lot of different opportunities. You just got to keep throwing your hat in different rings, because you never know which one's going to work out.
Well, you make a very good point there. We're speaking to Mike O'Malley, of course. He's New Hampshire bred and lives in Los Angeles now. His show, Escape to Margaritaville, at the Ogunquit Playhouse, the Leary Pavilion, through August 28th. It's a nice long run, so people can get to see it. You can check out ogunquitplayhouse.org. What's it like for you? As you mentioned, you preface your comments by saying that, it starts on paper, it starts within your mind with ideas, and then to finally see it performed in its entirety. What is that like, that whole process for you as a writer, as an author, and as an actor?
Well, I think when you're an actor, it's different because you get the script and the script's already written, and there's a tone that, the people who are creatively deciding, what is to be done, you want to just serve their vision. When you're a writer coming up with a brand new idea that has nothing to do with anything, you have the blank page. That's terrifying. I don't mean terrifying in the sense of the word terrifying. It just means it's daunting, I should say, because you have to come up with something completely out of your own head. But if there's stories that you want to tell about people and how we live now, you eventually steer yourself back around to what that is. I think that's what happened on that show, Survivor's Remorse, that I created. In terms of the Jimmy Buffett musical, you have the source material. The songs are the songs. It's not going to be a concert and it's not going to be a biopic. Escape to Margaritaville is not the story of Jimmy Buffett's life. And so the challenge was to come up with a story that knit together those songs. Now, thankfully for me, Greg Garcia, who created My Name is Earl and Yes Dear and Raising Hope, and is just such a terrific writer, I called him up. That was the smartest thing I did. I called him up and I said, "Do you want to write a Broadway musical?" And he said, "Yes." And then, for a lot of the time period we were working on that, I was working on a TV show, and so Greg did so much of the heavy lifting of just coming up with, how to tell the story and how to work this, the songs. And so that's I would say that's one of the biggest things when you're writing a musical. If you're going to write it with somebody else, get a really smart guy or gal who's industrious, because that certainly was a blessing to me.
The show runs at the Leary Pavilion in Ogunquit, all part of the Ogunquit Playhouse, now through August 28th. You can check out ogunquitplayhouse.org, and we hope that you get a chance to see it by the end of the month. Mike O'Malley joining me. Always great to talk to you, Mike, my friend. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Mike, next time I'm rolling through Nashua or Portsmouth or Durham, I'll look you up. And thanks for doing such a great job to spread the word about what people are trying to get done in New Hampshire creatively. It's your voice that is helping spread the word so that artists can be supported in New Hampshire. I want to repeat, I'm a guy who grew up in Nashua. I had, just the idea that we used to go see plays and go see performances. That's what inspired me to pursue this career, and it's been a blessing to me. But what you do by spreading the word about what people are doing creatively is really, really important to the arts in New Hampshire, and I want to thank you for that.
I love promoting the arts. It's part of my life. It's part of my blood, and obviously it's part of your success in your blood as well. Thank you so much, Mike. Great to talk to you.
Mike, thanks, man. Peace.